What's up guys, it's Kristen here today with my review of The Vegetarian by Han Kang. So this is a South Korean novel and it was translated by Deborah Smith, and I'm sure most people have heard of it by now because it's really been making the rounds here on BookTube, and it was longlisted for the Man Booker International Prize, and I just read it last week, and I remember the moment I finished it, all I could think was, wow, that was freaking amazing, but it's too bad I am never going to be able to do a review of this book because it is so incredibly complex and multi-layered. It is full of symbolism, and I'm not going to try to say that I understand everything. Then I just can't stop thinking about it, and the more I watch and read other people's reviews, I see a whole new perspective on the book. And I talked about this with Hilary and Kathleen Ann, who I buddy read the book with, which if you're gonna read The Vegetarian, please do a buddy read because there is a lot to talk about and a lot that you're not going to understand. So this is going to be my attempt to review it and try to explain why I love it so much and why maybe you should give it a shot, so just bear with me for this one. So for a very brief overview of the plot, the novel centers around a woman named Young Hai who decides to become a vegetarian, or actually a vegan. The novel is separated though into 3 different parts or acts. You only briefly see the story from her point of view because the first act is told from her husband's point of view, the second act is from her brother-in-law's, and the third act is from her sister's. So when the novel starts, Young Hai has just decided that she wants to become a vegetarian and she is throwing out all of the meat in her house, and this is especially controversial in a country like South Korea, and her husband and the rest of her family are really not happy about her making this choice, but they are more frustrated or angry with her because she won't explain to them why she has done this. Anytime anyone asks her why she has decided to become a vegetarian, her only response is, "I had a dream." Not that I really think her family cared to hear her explanation, but I think they wanted to hear her say something along the lines of that it was for health reasons or for her ethical beliefs. And it's not just that she's become a vegetarian, she is exhibiting a lot of strange behaviors that are not in her usual character. And because, like I said, you're only in Young Hai's head for very brief moments, you kind of feel like her family, that you don't understand why she's doing these things, although I wouldn't react the way that her family does. And as the novel goes on, her behavior does get a lot more extreme and erratic, and she does become a danger to herself at certain points, but it also seems like the more her family tries to control her, the worse it gets. There are a lot of extremely strange and bizarre scenes in this book that you don't really understand why they're happening or what the author is trying to get across with them. There are just so many different themes and ideas that you can take away from this book, and everybody kind of has a unique perspective on it, and seeing as it is only 188 pages, this little tiny thing packs a punch. You can see it as kind of a critique against South Korean society, where being normal and like everybody else is really prized above individuality, and where being different is almost seen as a rebellion of sorts. Reading it, I feel like a lot of her family members were feeling extremely repressed and that they couldn't express themselves, and so Young Hai's decision to just reject all of these societal norms and live the way that she wants to is almost more frustrating to them because they wish they could have the courage to do that. It can also be seen as a critique on the patriarchal society in general, as you see how the men in her life are incredibly controlling of her. There's also a lot to talk about with mental illness. You don't know as a reader what is wrong with her. You know, is she actually schizophrenic or anorexic or suicidal, what have you, even though I don't really think that's the point of the book. I found it especially interesting because her whole family is just fixated on Young Hai and how are they going to fix her and what is wrong with her, and they're not looking at themselves and their own actions, which are not normal and have been incredibly destructive to Young Hai herself. And it feels like the whole book, Young Hai is just trying to escape the suffering that she has gone through her whole life, and you get brief little glimpses into things that had happened and you really understand her character much more. And I haven't even talked about the writing yet in this book, which is just incredibly beautiful, which is also a testament to the translator, Deborah Smith, because it just feels seamless. The whole atmosphere and tone of the book for me went between these extremes where at times it could be incredibly beautiful and ethereal and have this dreamlike quality to it, and then there are other times when it feels like a genuine nightmare and the writing is incredibly dark and disturbing and gritty. It is absolutely chock full of symbols and reoccurring themes, many of which I didn't even notice. Hilary pointed out to me that every section ends with some kind of reference to birds or flight. And maybe that's not for everybody, but for me, that is what makes this book incredibly brilliant. The fact that I want to go back and reread it and try to pick up on all of these themes and all of the nuances. I have read 500 plus page books that I have had less to talk about afterwards. And after watching a lot of reviews of this book, I can see how it can be extremely polarizing, and I see a lot of people's critiques of this book and saying that maybe Han Kang was just putting these incredibly grotesque and bizarre scenes in just for the sake of being controversial. I get that this is a book that is just not going to be for everybody, which is totally okay. If you read it and did not enjoy it, that is fine. But if you are still considering picking it up and haven't read it yet, I would just encourage you to go in with an open mind about it. And for me, reading it and examining it, I don't really take anything in this book at face value. I feel like it was all meant to be some kind of symbol or theme of something else. It's definitely a book that is going to challenge you and leave you with more questions than answers, and it is definitely a puzzle to figure out, which is something that I love in books. And so for me, this is one of the best books that I have read so far this year. So for that reason, I am definitely going to recommend that you check out The Vegetarian if you have not already. And as I said though in the beginning, I apologize if this review is just incredibly scattered and all over the place. I would also love to keep the conversation going in the comments. I know a lot of people have already read this, because for me, this is a book that needs to be discussed and examined in depth, and I love to hear other people's perspectives of it and something that they noticed in the book that I didn't. So please, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!